Again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Blaine's World. This starts the series on the Linux operating system. This is a picture of Linus Torvalds. He's the young Helsinki student that in his second year of computer science wrote what they called a kernel, or the basic core of an operating system, while he was still in class learning computer science, because he wanted to run his own computer at home, and the operating system they used at that time, which he was using on the university's computers, called Linux, was extremely expensive. It was a mini version of the Unix system that most of the large corporations and businesses at that time used on their systems, and they supplied the colleges with the Linux version for them to be able to train and teach the students how to operate and work on their computers. Linus thought that he could make his own operating system using the school's system and write the code, so he would be able to make an operating system to run his own computer at his house at no cost to him. And he was able to get just the basics of one beginning, and shared the code in what they had as a user group, a usernet group back then, when it was all dial-up equipment and there was no internet. But they had bulletin boards and other areas where you could post and paste code and information and things even back then. So he put the information out, letting people know it was something he's been working on for a little while, and it's starting to come together. And if anybody had some suggestions or ways to improve it, that he would take a look at what they had, but wouldn't promise that he would put it into effect. And slowly other people started using it and adding to it, and over the years it became known as the Linux operating system. Today, if you want to utilize Linux, let me show you a couple other pictures real quick also I've got here. There's another one here. It's not going to work for me now. Wonderful. Here's him in his younger partying days still. There's the general graph of Linux, and here's the basics of it. The kernel was written again by him in 1991 as a student at the University of Helsinki. He released that first version to the internet in September 1991. That was almost 10 years to the very week after the first personal IBM 5150s hit the market in September of 1981. And then he released the second version out in October. Today, that's what runs the internet, is Linux. You may access Amazon and Facebook and Google and other websites from your Windows XP, 7, 10, whichever system you're using on your computer to get information. But the internet itself, the server farms, Amazon, all those places, the operating system that they run on those computers is the Linux operating system. Here's where you would get started at, distrowatch.com. This is where all the distributions, or different types and flavors as they call it, of Linux are available. Unlike Windows, it's all controlled by one company and it's all one operating system that they write, one version at a time. After Linus released the Linux kernel out onto the internet, people were free to add to, modify, do whatever they wanted to with it. It's what they call open source software, so it's free for others to copy and utilize and personalize to their own needs. And so people have done that. And then the result is there's literally hundreds and hundreds of versions of Linux. These talk about some of the latest releases, who's released what version, and the different information on packages that go into Linux. Over here you see distributions. On your right you see page hit rating and distribution starting at rank number 1 with Mint. That is the operating system you're looking at now, is Linux Mint. It's been the number 1 distribution for about the last 5 or 6 years at this point. I myself started using Linux the first time I downloaded one of these distributions and tried and installed it on my computer was back in 2003. It was a distribution known as Fedora, which here is number 7 at this point on the hit list. But it was Fedora Core, they called it at that time, 3. Now Fedora is up to, I believe, 23 or 24. The other ones are just different versions. You've got Debian, Manjaro, Ubuntu, whereas Linux Mint is actually a variation of Ubuntu. That's what a lot of people do. Will take one of these major distributions and then they'll modify it or add to other things to make it more customized to how they would like it. And then they'll share it as a new distribution out here on the internet. Linux Mint, as you see, is right here because they've just released a new one, 18.3, and they have different kinds of window managers that affect how the screen and the other things look as you utilize it. The ones they've released most recently are the KDE and the XFCE desktop versions. They usually release 3 or 4. They've got those two, plus the Cinnamon desktop, and one called the XFCE and the LMDE as well. So there's lots of choices, and it's all going to be a matter of personal taste and which one that you might like and how it looks and operates for you. The good news about Linux, unlike the Windows system, is you can try all these out and see how they work for you without ever installing a thing on your computer. 99% of these, as you see over here on the right, that you can click on and go to, get the information about their website and where to download their version of Linux. All of them are, the majority of them, I would say, are available to download as what they call a live CD install, meaning you download the program itself onto your computer. Depending on the size of it, you would burn it to a CD or a DVD disc, and then when you turn your computer off and back on again and insert that disc into your drive, you can choose to either install it and try it out that way, or you can simply use it from the disc. It will give you that option of starting it up from the disc and trying it out. Nothing that you do will be saved. If you download something, there's nowhere it will be saved or anything like that, but it gives you an opportunity to see how the system operates on your computer, how it looks, the way the different icons look, and where the different where you find your files, and how you look at a movie and how you listen to videos and all that. You'll be able to play with all that without making any changes to your own computer in any way. Once you turn it off, it will tell you you need to remove the installation disk from your CD drive, and then when you restart your computer, you're back to what you had before. If you decide it's something that you really like and want to try, there's a way most of the time you can do what they call a dual boot. You can choose to install Linux, and if you tell it that you still want Windows to stay on your computer and you want to install it alongside Windows, then it will walk you through those steps and show you how to save Windows on your computer while still installing Linux alongside of it. So there are multiple options in how you can utilize it if you decide to do so. There's a lot of information on the website at the linuxfoundation.com and other Linux websites that are easy to find through distrowatch.com and so forth, that will give you all the information possible learning how to utilize and work with Linux. There's also a bunch of videos here on YouTube. Mine is one among many, and I'm nowhere near the expert some of these guys are, because a lot of them that have got their videos on here are system administrators and guys that have been doing it for literally decades, and they have a lot of system administrator experience from the command line, whereas most of what I'm going to be showing everybody is what they're used to dealing with as what they call the GUI, or the graphic user interface, and it doesn't involve having to have any knowledge of how to use the terminal or the command line as they call it. And I'm not sure any of y'all are familiar with the older systems of Windows, but back when they first came out, you had basically only what they call a terminal to work with. And I want to show you an example of that real quick, of what most of the terminals look like. And that was all you had when it was DOS and DOS 3.0 and so forth, was just simply a way you could type in lines of code and information, and that was how you communicated with the computer. You didn't have mice of any kind, you didn't have any of these graphics and colors and so forth. You just had a simple green letters on a black screen, and that was pretty much the extent of how you worked with your computer system. And it's not wanting to cooperate with me here. Let me pull up another one. I'm trying to pull up a application. There we go. So this is what the terminal looks like in Linux. And just to have a little fun to start off with, we will do something from the movies you've seen before, most likely. Unless I don't have it installed. Oh, I haven't installed it. Okay, well, I'm going to give you all a little quick lesson there. So we apt, that's an application that we want to install, and it's called C Matrix, and it's just basically what you would think it was from the movie The Matrix. And I have to give it my password. Oh, and I may give it the wrong password. I did. So I'm using 3 different systems here at the same time when I'm doing some of this, so I'm having to switch back and forth, and sometimes well, I just have to switch user then completely. And then I can proceed with what I'm trying to do here. There we go. Okay, so now I want to apt and install C Matrix. And I don't know if any of y'all noticed, but then when I changed or switched user to the controller or root user, my ID went from green to red. That lets me know that with the red, if I make any mistake, I could seriously mess up my machine, because I'm doing things from the administrator position that will allow lots of changes that can be done. And if you don't know what you're doing, yes, you can mess things up or make your machine where it won't start up again. So I would suggest when you start learning about it, do everything through the package managers, where it's what they call the GUI, or the graphic user interface, like we're on now. So you'll have a lot of comfort in working with the system before you start trying to work on the command line. And again, there's a bunch of stuff here on YouTube, guys that will show you how to do everything, edit files, delete, move files, and all kinds of stuff that you can do. Once you get comfortable in using Linux, it is a lot faster to get some things done this way, working from the command line, than it is from a graphic interface, simply because it takes a lot longer to load the window up with all those colors and features for you to see, rather than just typing in on this line. And we're almost done. And this is basically, when I first started using Linux, this was the only way you did add new software and other packages that you wanted to use to modify and customize your system to what you needed it to do. It's a lot easier now, like I said, with the package managers. Everything's explained and shown in a lot different context. But this way does proceed a little bit quicker sometimes. And keep in mind that when you're using a Windows system, that you most of the time are going to be paying for all those software packages when you try to get them online and so forth, whereas all of this in Linux is absolutely free. You're not being charged for the operating system itself, and you're also not being charged for any of the software that you're installing. It's just available there for you to download for when you want to utilize it in the way you choose to. So that's a little bit about the command line part of Linux. And again, this is distrowatch.com. That's where you want to go to find all the different flavors of Linux. Try a few of them. Play with one that feels comfortable to you. None of them are going to be exactly like Windows. There's a few that they've made that are close to it, and they give you good information on here on the latest distributions that have had new upgrades or new releases and what they are. I myself have used Linux, but I've also used Debian, I've used Ubuntu, Fedora, TrueOS, Zorin, CentOS. There's quite a few in here I've played with. One of the first ones I started using actually now is all the way down here at 15. I was PC Linux OS I was using for a couple of years before I found Linux Mint. Back in 2008 and 9 I was using PC Linux OS, and around 10 or 11 when Mint came out I happened to see about it on DistroWatch here and switched over to it, and I've been using nothing but Mint for the last 7, almost 8 years now. I can do anything at all that I used to do on a Windows machine. I can watch anything anywhere online. I can burn videos. I can burn DVDs. I can download programs. There's a lot of sophisticated software that you can do almost anything running businesses. There's specialized packages for healthcare centers, for doctors' offices, for lawyers. There's all kinds of specialty packages that have been written by different enterprises for those specialty needs in business. And like I say, the bulk of the internet itself already runs on Linux. It's just all of the people accessing it that still run on Windows. So this is just like I said, a beginning introductory to show you how to get involved with Linux, where to find it, how to start utilizing it a little bit, and we'll make a few more videos showing you. I'll do some installs of a system from scratch and show you how we go to the package manager and add different things to you, whether you want to do stuff with music or whether you want to do stuff with publishing, writing. There's lots of different specialty software you can use if you're a photographer and want to use special software for editing or doing special effects to your photos. There's some versions of Linux that are designed audio visual AV Linux they call it, and a couple other ones that are strictly for making music or recording and playing with sound, modifying it. There's versions of online organs and keyboards and synthesizers that you can download in Linux that are free to make almost any kind of sound you could possibly make to create your own music or CDs or DVDs, whatever. So there's a lot of software out there, and again, it's the 90% of it is all free and available. You just have to know where to go look for it, basically. Most of the stuff is already in a package manager that comes with all the different versions of Linux, and just as a matter of looking through the package manager and learning about what the different programs are and what they do, and most of them have a pretty good explanation of them, and I'll show you that in one of the next videos of when I open the package manager. It shows you what's necessary to make it work, and if there's any other packages that you need to download that it depends on, and that sort of thing. Some things get a little bit more complicated, yes, than it is working with Windows and letting it take control and do everything for you. But that's also part of the fun of learning to work with Linux, because you can have a completely customized system doing what you want the way you want, and change things, everything from where the bar is, like everybody's used to being down here. There's a standard place for the startup bar. Well, with Linux I can modify things. If I want this down here, this panel, if I want to move it around, for instance, it doesn't have to be at the bottom here in Linux. In Windows you don't have much choice, but here I can bring up something that shows you screen edge and whatever, and if I want my startup bar and all that information to be up here at the top instead, I can do that. I can move it up here, and now once I finish what I want, now it's up here, and I can click up here and do what I want. So there's a lot of modifications of everything: your desktop, your files, the icons you work with, what movie player you want to use, which video player you want to use. There's a lot of different options and customization that you'll be able to do with Linux that you'll never have an opportunity to do with one of the Windows systems. So thanks for watching again, y'all. I hope you enjoy this series of videos. It won't be a real long one. There's not a whole lot to cover in Linux except the basics, because the bulk of it is kind of experiment with it and finding out on your own what works and doesn't work for you, and how you like it and how you like to customize it. And there's, as always with everything like this, there's a million different opinions out there of what works best and what you should run. My advice is just play with it and see what feels comfortable for you and how you like it. Y'all have a great one. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you on the next one.